Yeah, I think there's two types of gardeners. There's one set of gardeners that put all their emphasis on the plant material, and then there's the other group that really focuses on creating incredible soil. Which one ends up with the better garden? And there's a little bit of an explanation required with that, is when you have plant material in the ground, you are benefiting the soil immensely. You are benefiting the organisms that live in the soil immensely by having your soil covered with vegetation. Now, if you had to have a 5-year plan, the soil is more important than the vegetation at the beginning. And if you focused on a smaller area of your yard, got the soil into an incredible state where it is incredibly productive and full of life, organic life that's in the soil, then your garden will flourish. So that is the big difference, is getting that head start with your soil. If your soil is incredible, it doesn't matter what you do, your plant material will reward you immensely. Things will grow like crazy. Yeah, I want to explain to everyone how I improve my soil, how I deal with my soil, how I try my best to have the most diverse soil I can conjure up. Now, the scenario is very interesting. I basically have this location where I can get lots of raw materials. I can get river sand, I can get stuff that we've grown, that we can compost. I can find chicken manure, horse manure, things that have fallen off the mountain, things that are in the river. So what I do is I have this concept of soil diversity. Soil diversity is very interesting because it works. The more diverse your soil is, the more you're feeding those microorganisms that live inside your soil. So always remember, get as many different materials and granular material, organic material, get as much of that diversity into your soil as you can. Never mind anything that anyone tells you. Getting as many different diverse materials in the soil will make your soil incredibly strong, will make the life in your soil incredibly diverse. That's phase one, making your soil super diverse. Phase number two is planting as many different plants, creating plant diversity, which in return feeds your microorganisms and creates different soil makeup. The organic life in your soils will be very diverse if on top of those soils you have different plant material. So plant diversity, soil diversity will create gardens that you will never imagine. It's really important to focus on everything in your garden being diverse. It'll attract insects, different insects. It'll attract all this life into your garden, which in return will make your garden a beautiful place. So remember, diversity, diversity, diversity. Keep getting your garden to be more diverse, and you will benefit immensely from that diversity. This soil conditioning scenario is a lot of work. Buying 6 inches of compost from a soil supplier isn't enough. You have to do the groundwork and get everything mixed together, and making sure that you got the soil triangle correct, where you have sand, loam, and clay in the right mixture. You need to do all those things. You need to do these hand tests that tell you that this has a lot of sand in it. You need to be completely aware of what is going on with your soil. It is really important to make sure that you pay attention to what's going on in your garden. Guess what? After 6 months, you'll have a really good idea that your soil is doing incredibly well, because your plants are showing this explosive, healthy growth. So that makes it really important to pay attention to your soil. So this spring, you should turn yourself into a soil gardener first. Focus on your soil, get your soil to an incredible state. Yeah, I do believe there are two types of gardeners. And I think there's the the soil freaks that make sure their soil is perfect. They do everything they can to have great soil that will support any type of plant life. And then there's the other type of gardeners that basically get the seeds into the ground. They do minimum work on their soils and they get growing. Now, if there was a 5-year plan in place, you would have this scenario where the people that pay attention to their soils would end up with more vigorous, stronger growth, more food production. There are gardeners that will actually sacrifice 1 or 2 years getting cover crops on the ground so that they can get their soil to a really great state, and they grow very little in the first 2 years. So the scenario is very interesting. If you basically have very little time, it is important to get your ground covered with vegetation, get plants in the ground, get seeds in the ground, get your soil working. And your soil amendment, if you have more time in the future, you can work on getting that soil to a perfect state where almost anything can grow in such a way that you will be in disbelief yourself. Plants are very forgiving. They have this ability to adapt to many different types of soils. But if you give them the best starting point, if you give them great soil, if you work your soil in such a way that you're thinking about keeping your plant life alive for a long time. Fruit tree is a good example. If you dig a great big hole, get that fruit tree set up with real organic energy, and you have a 30-year plan with this space that you've created, that fruit tree will thrive and it will provide you with fruit for the rest of your life. So there's this soil investment that a lot of people are getting wrong. They don't really understand that soil investment is the best investment you can make in the garden. The plants will come regardless. If you have great soil and you do nothing, guess what? It will be covered with vegetation very rapidly. So this idea of soil coming first might be a new attitude that you have to adapt for your gardening scenario this spring. And I think soil first is very interesting because it is so full of life, this organic life that's inside soil. 56% of everything that is alive lives in our soils. That's how much life is in a tablespoon of any soil that you dig out. So remember, feed those organisms, feed your soil, keep your soil working, keep your soil covered. Always have this attitude towards your soil as being the most important aspect of your gardening effort. If you look after your soils will look after you. That's the scenario you have to sort of adapt, that any energy you put into your soil will come back out. The big worry with soils is that they actually end up running out of energy. You want to avoid that at all costs, so you have to pay attention to keeping your soils very strong. How do you do that? Well, there's a really good indicator, and that is your plant material itself. If your plant material starts to look very tired, you know that the plants are running out of energy. It is a circular motion. These plants will provide 30% of their energy from the sun back into the ground. And so there is an equation where you have to pay attention that you have to feed the soil enough to keep that circular activity going, and to have all those microorganisms in your garden fed with micronutrients. So there's this circular motion that you as a gardener have to maintain. And it's not always easy because you have to really be on top of every area in your garden and make sure that everything is looked after and fed incredibly well. It's no different than feeding pets or yourself. Your soil needs to be fed and to be supported in many ways that you can support incredible, vigorous plant growth. Yeah, if your gardening efforts haven't been as great as you would like them to be, then maybe you need to take a different stance on your garden this year. What I'm saying is it might be in your interest to start turning into a soil gardener. And what a soil gardener is basically you pay attention to your soils more than anything else. The prep work is immense, the rewards are incredible, and if you can sort of really understand the power of soil, it will make you a much better gardener in the future. So pay attention to your soils, work them, keep them healthy, keep them alive, keep them covered, and keep them working.